Hello and welcome to the Potomac Division Virtual Clinic 42. Today we're going to be having a discussion of model railroading, today being Sunday, January 21st, 2024. This is going to be an open forum. Pretty much anything you want to discuss, talk about. I do have a short presentation to talk about a project that I'm working on with regards to a staging track for my layout. And with that, we'll get started. So my staging yards project has begun, and in January this year, I decided that I wanted to conduct operation sessions on my Norfolk Southern Connector railroad layout, and I needed to think about what I needed to do and how do I make it so. I knew that speaking with other people and having attended other operation sessions that I would have to have a staging area to make up trains so I could have trains that could run on my layout, and also not only be able to dispatch trains from a track, but also bring trains in from a track to have an operator of a yard be able to make up trains, consists and such for other trains. I also knew that in my discussion with other people that I had dealt with, that I need to have an interchange track that would allow me to bring trains from outside the layout, such as Bob Rodriguez's Nickel City Railroad or Pete LaGuardia's New York Central, and they would have a locomotive and perhaps cars to come onto my layout, run around, depart, go back to their layout. So we want to have that interchange. And I also knew that I wanted to have signals that would show me switch status of the new track I'll be installing, the new track leads going down to my yard. So here's the area that was involved. And my layout is basically a large dog bone. And we're at the west end of the layout and right there by the engine service shop. In the yard shop, I'm coming through a large curve. That's the current main line. And I had to cut to that current main line to bring the staging area, which will go off to the bottom of an existing peninsula that has just been used for storage in the past. So if you look at the slide here, you'll see two arrows. That's where the connections to the yard would go from. There'd be one coming in a westbound direction, if you will, allowing you to go eastbound, and one going eastbound to allow you to depart from the yard going westbound. So the unused area of the layout is left there, and I've been sitting there for years, and I decided we're going to take the leads and go down through there to go to a track, staging track that will be running off to the left, if you will. I also decided that I wanted to have signals to be able to tell me the status of the switches on the main, whether they're directed to the main or directed to the staging area. With that, being the economic individual I am, I decided to use some existing styrene plastic I had, some red green LEDs, and Oregon rail dwarf signal heads. And this is one of the heads here that would be made up, and also has some ladders in my kit bash box. So basically, I've got some existing ladders, a piece of styrene tubing here, a piece of styrene at the base, and this dwarf head that would put together and make the final signal. The switches I used for the new leads on the main were Preco 87, and that should be 86 also, which are curved left-hand and right-hand Frog switches. I selected these because the inner radius on these switches is 30 inches, which matched the existing layout that I have, and the outer radius being 36 would be a good transition to go in and create the leads to go down to the staging yard. Here you see a picture of the left-hand switch after installation. It's going to be controlled by a tortoise motor. This is where my first learning point took place. The Pico switch itself is a power routed switch, and it's designed to have power coming in from the end here and power route to either the main or to the divert route. And I was using them backwards, so I was trying to bring power from here, trying to go this direction, and that won't work. So I had to put in a jumper to connect the A and the B rails to power and make it work. So installing the jumpers was the solution to the problem. This is the right-hand switch on the other end. I haven't put the extension onto the bench work here yet, but same situation. And I've got power here, and I've got power, which since the power is coming from this direction, it will route to here or route to there. But I did put jumpers in to make sure, because this it's not going to change here at all in terms of polarity. So here we have the left and right hand switches installed. That creates the lead going through this switch here down to the staging yard. And the other track here is the interchange. This interchange here is constantly powered and does not have any issue with polarity, but I did discover that with the situation here, I've got an AB rail, A being on the outside, B rail being on the inside, that A and B, but when you get to here, we have a conflict at the switch, so we have to resolve that. So there's an electrical issue here, and the polarities coming in from the leads from the east and west are opposite, so we need to fix that, and we had to decide how to do that, so we made it into a Y configuration. My treating as a Y by isolating this section here where the yellow lines are at. This section will be isolated, and we'll use a PSX AR auto reverser from DC Specialties to change the polarity of this section to match whatever is necessary to allow trains to come through. So the eastbound here, it's going eastbound, from the yard to the eastbound is constantly powered. So it agrees this section here needs to be switched. So if we come out here, we get that AB reversal. We don't want to have a problem. We're going to use tortoise motors to control the switches. And here you can see them installed. We can see signals. You see the green, it's indicating this switch is now thrown for the main. There's a signal back here also. If I was coming the other direction, I see green indicating the switch is thrown for the main. And down here on the yard lead, we will see a signal down there. It's going to show red. We'll catch up with that in a minute. The tortoises are sort of ugly to look at, so we had to find a way to disguise them. In this case, we kit bashed a building and put the tortoise motor inside of it. This is another shot from the other direction. So we kit bashed the building with parts we had laying in our scrap box. And here we can see the red signal, which is indicating the main is thrown, switches to the main. So this signal, remember there was a signal back here, it's going to be green, and this one will be red because the yard is not set to go onto the main at this point. And once the switch is thrown the other direction, this would change to green, this would change to red, and the other one changed to red. On the other one, we decided to hide the tortoise motor inside of an existing, or not existing, but rather a pill bottle that I had available. This is a pill bottle after I added some plastic to the bottom, polystyrene plastic, and also a couple of roof details I had laying in my kit bash box. So we created the tank, and this tank is waiting for decals and some finishing to make it a final product. But the tortoise motor is inside, and here we can see the throw. That's I use music piano wire as my throws from my tortoises coming across. So that's how we hid the switch over there. So here's the transition part of the yard. We have going eastbound, then we can go westbound. We have a spot here to park a engine that could be used for a switch engine. This is the interchange track, and this is where the staging area will connect into here through a leaf that folds up, and we'll see that a little bit later on. In this box here, we have DPDT switches. The box, I always like to use some sort of a project box, but I couldn't find one, so I constructed one out of polystyrene plastic at this point. The left-hand switch controls the switch here. Let's go westbound. This one controls the one that controls the switch over here, allows us to go eastbound. So these are connected to the yard leads switches that are coming in from the main. And then here on our lower right here, we have a box here that has two female banana jacks that we'll use to as power connectors to transfer power over to our staging guard. We'll see that a little bit later in the presentation. So now we'll go to the staging guard. And the staging guard requires some thought. I repurposed my civil demonstration board to become part of the staging track, and I had to remove all the track that was the hand-laid track, switches and other scenery-related items. And here you can see the board after it had been cleaned off. I had to have a pass-through on the to the right here. There's a bathroom on the lower level of my house, and to get the bathroom from the layout area, you need to go through here. So we constructed this fold-up leaf here that attaches to the repurposed track. We put the staging in here. You can see the 3 staging tracks. We can also see the interchange track. This is on the fold-up piece. There's a 3-way switch here. That's going to be Pico SL E99 Letrafrog. There's a place here to park a locomotive, staging locomotive, or a yard engine. And here's the interchange track coming through. So here are the bathrooms right around that wall. This is a piece that has to be able to fold up or fold down. And here we can see the leaf folded up, allowing pass through. This could also be an area in the future that we'll use for possible dispatching if we get there. One of the considerations we had to have for this leaf panel was that the track here will have a problem, a pinch point here, if that pivot point is below the top part of the track. So here we've arranged the pivot point so it's above the level of the or the surface of the benchwork. This is about 1/4 of an inch, and this pivot point is just a little bit above the level of the track. So when the track the panel folds up and down, we don't have any pinching. This track doesn't interfere with itself. There's no possibility of creating track damage. Another consideration was keeping the power from getting caught during folding and unfolding process. So we put this location here, we put a little slight twist in the wire to make that happen. The hinge leaf connects to the transition through this box. I was talking about the box earlier. Here you can see the banana jacks, the red and black wire transferring power to the staging yard. This physically is a gap here. There's no connection between the right and the left. The power gets from here to here through these wires. I wanted to use a 3-way switch to save space in the staging yard. I had a Shinohara switch that was given to me many years ago, and I tried to use it. I found that it was shorting. So I purchased that Pico SL E99 Letrafrog. And with that, we have to look at the fact that with this switch, there are 3 frogs. We're looking at the underside here. 3 frogs. 2 of the frogs are connected to a wire that comes out of that switch, and the other frog connected to another wire. So there's 2 wires coming out of the E99, and we use those wires to power the frogs. This being a Letrafrog, the frogs have to be powered. An Insel frog version would not require powering, but the Letrafrog does require powering. So that creates a situation where we have to be able to power the frogs. It's important to note the fact that these rails here coming off this frog here, and the rails here coming off this frog, these 4 rails have to be insulated. We can see that in the diagram here. The outside here is constant. It's constantly, let's call it the A wire or A phase. And this is stock rail is always the B phase. But we have to isolate these frogs so we don't have a shorting situation. Here's a diagram that I downloaded from the website at Pico. We can download a scale drawing and print it. That allows you to be able to use it to coordinate the actual switch location with the other tracks going to be connected, get things hooked up properly so we have good flow. But I use this to be able to figure out how the wiring was set up and what I would have to do to power the frogs. One thing that they mentioned in the Pico art directions was the fact of using what they call a SPDT switch, a pair of them to power the frogs properly. But these frogs are going to change polarity depending upon whether we're going right, left, or straight. This is looking at the switch from the top. Here's that diagram again. And once again, we were talking about two of the frogs being powered to the one wire and other frog being powered to the other wire. It's showing the double gaps necessary on those 4 rails. So there's the 3-way switch. You can see here the wires coming off the switch. I put pieces of plastic tubing here to pass the wires through. These wires are bare wires coming out of the package. They do provide some tubing that's very flexible and you can place over the wires to insulate them. And I cut those off, attached some number 22 layout wire to each. Give me better needs to be able to connect into the excuse me. Connect into the device that's going to power the frogs. We'll talk about that in a minute. The manual selectors are located here. There's a pair of them that allows the switch to be made so it can go left, center, or to the right. We're going to leave these manual. They can be wired to a tortoise motor or other switch motor, but I've elected to leave them manual. Here we can see the underside of that fold-up leaf. This is the device that's going to allow us to power the frogs. It's called a frog juicer. This is the blow-up of it. The 2 wires here are going to the outputs from the frog juicer. There's one going to each of the frog circuits, if you will. So one of these wires is going to power 2 of the frogs. The other one's going to power the single frog. At this location here is where your track power is going to come in. And this is a Tam Valley Depot DFJ 003U frog juicer. It also has some jumpers on it that can be used for other purposes. So this picture gives you an idea overall of what I've done. This is the yard lead coming in from the going westbound, coming into the yard. This is the yard lead coming from the eastbound into the yard. This is once again a location to park a switch engine. We're going to connect through this switch here. This switch controls which direction we're going to go off. Staging area going eastbound or westbound. That connection to the staging track. Here's the 3-way switch. That's the far end. This is about 88 inches. So we have about 88 inches of staging track on each line. We have 3 staging lines and 1 interchange. So the work is in progress and we're hoping to have this done. Thank you. Okay, now that we're recording, let's get started with that. So anyhow, I scratch built these the signals, and I built signals that be on both sides of the two wide turn signals, as well as a couple other locations. These will be tied into tortoise motors that are going to be controlling those those turnouts. So I purchased the Picos SL87s. That should be an 86 and an 87. That's left hand and right hand. Selected because the inner radius matched the radius that's on my current railroad, which was 30-inch, and the outer was going to be 36. So those two combinations, it worked very well, and I'd be able to cut them straight in. We're not doing any other modifications to the current layout. So here's the left-hand switch that's been cut in. Originally, this was the main, and now this will be the lead going down to the staging area. So we've got the left-hand switch. And I also learned at this point that Pico switches are power routing. And they're designed to have power coming in at this end. And they'll determine whether there's going to be power going to this direction or this direction. But in my case, I'm feeding power up this. So when I came through here, I got to here, guess what? Nothing was happening because I can't backfeed. So I had to put a jumper that location. So I made sure I had power coming up. Once I got that, then everything functions well. And there's no problems with polarity here. So that was the first lesson I learned about the Picos. And it's one of those things that you learn. And this is what they call an insul frog, which means the frogs here are insulated versus the electro frog version. So I cut this switch in, and there's the other switch cut in. And I haven't installed this new piece of bench work to get that track lead to come down, but that's where we started. And here we are. This is the left hand and the right hand, and we're coming down. What you're seeing here is the lead that's coming down to the staging track. And this over here will be the interchange track that I was talking about earlier that would allow me to be able to take cars, set them aside with the locomotive to go to somebody else's layout. So it'd be like interchanging with another railroad, if you will, whoever it happened to be. So that's what I'm trying to do here. And now you can see how it's starting to come together. But that took a little bit of planning. And remember, I had to think about the power situation. Okay, so I've done that. And as I come around the loop, electrically, we know that we're looking at one rail being, let's call it A, and the other rail being B. Well, if I come around like that, A's on the outside and B's on the inside, if I pull one of these numbers, that's going to cause me an electrical problem, which we encountered. And, well, what are we going to do about that? And when I get to here, I'm going to have a short as soon as I hit this. So I've got to isolate somewhere. So what I did was I treated this like a Y, if you will. And I isolated here and here on this lead. So this will always be with the track that's out there. But if I'm trying to come back on this side, I can reverse this now to match up. And how do I do that? Well, I'm going to do that through a DCC Specialties PSX AR auto reverse. And I tried an Digitrax AR1, but it won't flip fast enough, and I get dead shorts. The AR will do it. I found that after some conversations from my fine compadres up at Tony's Train Exchange, and also talked with a person at Digitrax and a couple other people, and we decided this is what we do. It works. So that took care of the electrical issue that created. And every time I turned around with this, there was something else that popped up because I'm novice. I'm not new, but I'm not old to the hobby. And I'm still learning a lot about DCC. So we got that far. And then we came back. We put our tortoise motors in. Our tortoise motors are controlling those two wide radius turnouts that I had from Pico. This is the one that's going to go from if I want to go eastbound, then shoot down here to go to the staging yard. This is the one over on the westbound side over here. So the westbound side comes on down. So we have LEDs installed, and you've seen the green LED here. What this green LED here is, they have a signal here, and both of these are going to show the same color. It's going to tell me the status of this turnout. If it's green, that's telling me I'm thrown to the main, which means I'm going to come around here and stay on the main. If I was coming eastbound on my track, if you come into here, I see the green, knowing, okay, I'm going to continue to run the loop. But if I throw the switch to take me to the staging yard, this is going to go red. That's telling me I'm not thrown to the main. I'm now diverting to the staging yard. And if I can get this box here to move. I have a similar situation on the other side here, where on the track coming down, the tortoise is here and there's a signal. You're seeing the backside here, it works the same way. So those signals are telling me what's going on with my tortoise motors, and I'm thinking that if I ever get into virtual sessions, that's way down the road, I think, that the signals will let those folks know what the status of that signal is. Here, we're seeing the red signals. That's telling me, if I look up here, that this thing is set now to go into the staging yard. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Got the greens. This is telling me this is set to the main, so I can't go out of the staging yard into the main. So remember, there's a signal back here, one here, one here. This signal green, this signal green, this signal being red is telling me that this is set up to stay on the main. If I threw this to the switch to the staging track, this is going to go green, this will go red, and the one back here will go red. Now, I showed you those ugly tortoise motors. I said, I can't have those up there, so what am I going to do with that? Well, I hit it. I kit bashed this building, had a bunch of parts laying around, and I kit bashed this building, and that's sitting over top of that tortoise motor. And same thing, this is another view of that building. But the tortoise motor is inside, and the tortoise motor is controlled from another location we'll talk about in a minute. The other one I had, well, what am I going to do with the other tortoise motor? Well, I decided, well, I need a water tank to put some fire department water. Those of you that know me know I was associated with the fire department for 38 years. And I got to get some fire floss. I needed a water tank. So I found an old vitamin pill bottle and did some modifications to it, cut the bottom off and wrapped some styrene plastic, put a couple of styrene plastic pieces up here and painted a rascal. So that's my water tank. It still needs decals and some other things, but there's a tortoise motor inside there. And here you can see I use music wire to go from my tortoise motors to my switches. And there's the actuator right there, but the motor is inside here. So I hid them. And I also had old ladder parts laying around, and I had some styrene plastic and some old railings. So I made a platform so we could climb up the side of the tower and go up there and watch one of the trains, do some train watching from up there. Okay, so coming back, got this cut in now. So I need a way to control the switches. Remember, the tortoise motor is here and here, where they're controlled from this box. And I love to find project boxes. I seem to have a problem trying to find project boxes these days, so I built one out of polystyrene plastic. It mounted two DP-DT switches in them. So the switch on the right-hand side controls this motor, and the one on this side controls this motor. And the other thing we've got is my staging track is going to be off to the bottom here. It's going to be, and we'll talk more about that in a minute here. But I had to have some way to get power from the layout to the staging area. So I put a box here It put two female banana plug up there as outlets to be able to plug in to get my my track power. We'll see that again in a minute here. So now we'll start looking in the staging yard, and I had going through the MMR process. I had built this 6-foot long section here, and it was my demonstration board where I had my hand laid switches and everything in there. Well, I decided this thing's been sitting around for well since 2019. It's taking up space. I need to do something with it. I said, that could be part of my staging yard. So I stripped the track off and everything else and cleaned it down as best I could. And I still got and was able to get my my staging tracks installed as such. So it's been repurposed. And to do that, I had to clean that up. So that's where we're at here. And here is that repurposed module. This is another piece that I've added to it. It's hinged here. And this is the main layout over here. So I'm jumping across this area, and there's a reason why this is like this. And the problem is that this is my stairs coming down from upstairs, but to my right, there's a bathroom over there. And I figured if I'm going to have people in here running trains, like I can be there for 5 minutes, but I have to go to the bathroom. So I got to maintain access to the bathroom. And I didn't want people to have to jump over the staging area or duck under. I decided this thing's going to be able to lift up. So I arranged it like that. And in the right-hand picture, you can see the leaf that's hinged here. And this is the repurposed track. But the leaf, so now the leaf is the up position there. So that's how I'm going to be able to get to the bathroom, and also the folks that are running a staging area back there will be able to get back there, and also be able to get to my engine room and still keep the Admiral. That's my wife happy that she can move about, not have to duck under or jump over things. While we're here, this is that interchange track I was talking about earlier. And this is coming down through the yard. This will be the yard throat. This is the goes to the eastbound main. Then we come down and we come into a triple Y, and that's my be my 3 staging tracks there. They're about 88 inches long. I've also got a location here that I can park an engine, a switching engine back there, or I can do the same thing up here. This track actually stops right about where the arrow is now. That's another area I can put a staging engine or switch engine or whatever to get it out of the way so stuff can come in and out. So here we are with the leaf down. The bathroom's here to the right. There's my engine room back there. This is the staging area. One of these days, it might get cleaned up, becoming a dispatch area back here also, if we get there. And on the right-hand side is just another shot showing it with the leaf up. So that was my solution, to be able to get to the bathroom without having to go upstairs, being able to go right around that wall, and there it is. Was having a swinging leaf, if you will, went up and down. Now with that, we got to know another issue, because anytime we put something like this, we want to put a hinge, we go to fold this leaf up, what's going to happen? Well, I'm going to get a pinch point over on this side here, and these tracks could interfere with each other and bend the track, and I don't want that to happen. So I had to think about that for a minute. What I did was I elevated the pivot point, and this is a piece of aluminum here that's about 1/4 of an inch thick. But this pivot point is just about the same height as the top of the track. So when this opens up, the track clears. They don't pinch, don't slam into each other here, and they don't tear it up. So the continuity is through here, and the distance is such that the locomotives will still get there, but I still have to be able to jump the power through here, which you'll see in a minute. Was somebody going to ask a question there, or is it just somebody's? Okay. If you have questions, please feel free. So I had to take care of that and did that by putting this hinge point up. Like I say, I spaced it up about 1/4 inch. This is just nothing but a basic utility hinge. You get down at the hardware store. There's one on one side of the staging yard. There's one on the other side of the staging yard, but they're the same location. This is the underside of that folding leaf. And I had to think about, okay, I've got power that has to get back to here. So I've got these wired up back here and they come through to here. You see the wires coming off the track. The interchange is separate, so it's not wired up yet, but it's going to be separate from the others because this area back here is feeding up to the top here, and at the top you'll find that there's a where the two male banana plugs are at, and they'll be able to connect in later on to the to pull the power over here. On the right hand side, you can see that little slight twist in there, so that when this thing goes up and down, the wires don't get caught up between the two panels. Okay, so there's that box I was talking about. Here's the power coming from the staging area. And I'm going to connect in with the two banana plugs into these plugs here. That's how the powers can get to the staging area. And anything from here down will be fed through this. So this is a natural break. This acts as sort of isolation gap if you want. But the power is going from the main layout through this to the staging area. So I was talking about that wonderful three-way switch. Well, I was given a Shinohara three-way. It'd been used. I thought it was in good shape. Looked like it's in pretty good shape from off somebody's layout. And I went to use it, and when I first tried to run the first train through it, it didn't work. And I found that as soon as the train hit the three-way, that my circuit breaker was tripping out until I backed that locomotive off of that and wasn't going to do it. So obviously there's a dead short here. I had tested the staging tracks with a locomotive, no problem, but the problem was to isolate it down to the three-way, and this diagram to the left is not of that Shinohara. That's of the Pico that I used, and I got a three-way Pico. It's an SL E899 Electrofrog, and I replaced that Shinohara with that, and I discovered that the Electrofrog, and we're looking right here, and there's 3 frogs in that switch, and I'll be able to show you that better in a minute here. There's 1 frog here, 1 frog here, and 1 frog here. So this switch from Pico has 2 wires that come out of it. The first wire comes in and powers 2 of the frogs. The other wire, it comes around, powers this other frog. So now I have to get power to the frogs, and depending upon which route I want to go, and I'm looking at the other side of the switch here, whether I want to go this direction, go straight, or go this direction, the polarity of these frogs change. So I've got to come up with a mechanism to do that. So another issue has popped up. This is a diagram that you can download off the internet for the switch that we're talking about. And it can be printed out to scale, so you can use it when you're laying your track out. That's what I used it for, was the first thing to get the thing in the proper position. It was critical, especially on that piece of the staging yard where this connects in. On this end, there's going to be a short piece that takes you over to that point that I was showing you, that connects between the main layout and the staging yard. But I went through this and identified that this outer stock rail here was always going to be A. It was always going to be the A, if you will, wire, and this one over here would always be the B. This stuff inside here is going to start flipping back and forth, because here's your frog, here's your frog, here's your frog, and as you see right here, that's connected. It's not isolated. It's not insulated. So That frog can be A or B depending upon how the switch is thrown. So I wanted to get it out there, and I started thinking about how things are routed, so on and so forth. So these are my notes. I thought about using SPDT switches. That was something that Pico recommended, but I found a better solution. This is just blowing it up a little bit, and it's critical on this switch. This is ours backwards. I don't know why Pico did this on the package, but these rails right here, there's 4 of them. You see them right here, have to be double gapped. This is where we get into trouble, because these frogs have to change polarity depending upon the route. So that's the reason why I have the 4 gaps. And the stock rail here and the stock rail here, as you see, are not gapped. These 4 have to be gapped. So these 4 tracks right here have to be gapped on this switch. And I had to have feed coming in from this direction to make this work. Remember, it's power routing. And after this is gapped, on the other side of this gap, the power for the staging yard is put in by a jumper that goes across this whole thing. So we can get this switch isolated from the track from the staging yard. I hope that's making sense to you. So here we are with the switch in place, and here's the 2 frogs that are connected. Here's the 1 frog. If you look closely, you'll be able to see the wires, 1 here and 1 here, and I put them down through the layout. I'll put a piece of plastic here to feed the wires through, and the switches come with a bare metal wire attached to these frogs, and to give you a piece of tubing that you can put over that, which I've done here, and put it down through. Now on the other end, I cut the wire back and I attached some 22 gauge wire to it to make it so I have a better connector. I found these wires are so thin, if I try to put them in any kind of a connector that involves a screw, that would break it. So I wired some 22 gauge layout wire to it to make that happen. This switch is going to be manually thrown. So we have 2 selectors here that control these pieces to make it whether you're going to go left, straight, or right, depending upon how these are set. I could have put them on a tortoise motor. I could have put them on a single pole double throw switch to some other kind of a motor, but I like to just leave them manual in the future if we want to try to do that. The other motor thing, I could do that, but at this point, I'm going to leave it so it's manually set. Okay, so now we're looking back at the underneath side of that thing. And I was talking about I had to find a solution to be able to get the correct polarity to those frogs. So a lot of us that I've run into use frog juicers. This particular frog juicer is made by Tam Valley Depot. And in this case, this is a dual frog juicer. So we put DC, we put track power in the leads here. The A and the B would come in here, and it goes out the other side. And we have one of these wires goes to one of the frogs, the other one goes to the other frog. So that's just juicing the frog itself. It only takes, it's going to put the proper phase out there with the way it's set. And it will automatically do that. So, and we can do some other things with having them act as a pair, as an auto reverser. We can make them do all kinds of different things with some jumpers that are contained on that. We had the instructions, and that's beyond what I want to talk about today. But I'm going to connect my track power here. This is going to the frogs. This is just blowing up from here. So the power is coming in on that wire on the banana plugs. It's coming down to this end. It's coming to a junction here. From here, it feeds the tracks. Remember, this is on the other, if you will, from the main layout, this would be the far side of that 3-way switch. So that's how I'm feeding the far end, if you will, of the staging yard, is through that. So here is the transition piece. We're coming westbound. Okay, I've got a hand here. If you have a question, go ahead, John.
Okay, I had to unmute myself. Hey, Ernie, how did you secure the wires back the previous slide? You had the wires underneath your table there. How do you secure those?
Okay, let me see if I can find it.
That one right
These,
there. Yeah, right there.
okay. What I've got here is these are just simple little wire mounts that have a small nail, and it's plastic and it's hollow, so you just place it over it. You just drive the nail in and it holds the wire. Along these, if I can blow this up, you would see that there's probably about 8 wire ties in here, small wire ties to try to bundle it.
Okay.
I think it's very important, and I wish I would have done this when I started my layout, keeping your wires so that you can read your wires. When things get all tangled up and wrapped around each other, it's if you can keep your wiring neat so you can trace it in case you have to troubleshoot. And I figured I'm going to have to troubleshoot this sometimes. So we'll see red and black wires. We'll see that eventually when we get all done, all the blacks come together here, all the reds come together here, and the other part of this goes up to that banana plug I was talking. So the power's coming down and routing to the staging yard through this. This will eventually pick up a similar kind of thing as we mounted on the other side. We'll send the power to the interchange track. It's going to be separate from the yard. And that's because the interchange track does not have to do anything in terms of changing polarity. It's always the same polarity the way it's wired in. Did that answer the question, John?
Oh, yes, it did. But I just got one more. How thick is the surface there that the wires, I mean, the wire holders are attached to? Is it like half-inch plywood or something else?
I use 1/2 inch plywood, uh, and that's made out of 1x2s. So it's a 1x2 structure, but it's fairly strong. I know some people go to 1:4 and use 3/4 inch ply, but the bulk of my layout has 1/2 inch plywood. Uh, a lot of it has a 1/2 inch homosote. In this case, it's not there. I didn't use the homosote here, but I just used a 1/2 inch plywood, and that's worked well for me. I've not haven't had any problems with warping or anything like that. I've been very pleased with it.
Noise?
A little noise, but I'm up on I've got the cork road beds. That helps a little bit.
Okay.
Uh, but what's a little noise? Don't trains make noise when they're going down the road with the big, diesels running and everything? Shucks.
Yeah, but I heard that sometimes like, some of the noise, from the model trains is too loud.
I understand.
Yeah.
But I think for the short distance we're going to have here, which is like I said, it's maximum of 88 inches from the far end of the staging area to the terminus, if you will, where it's going to connect to the existing layout. I don't think it's going to be a major issue, and we're not going any significant speeds, so I don't think that's going to be a big problem. Okay, so here's the going eastbound to go westbound. There's that parking area I was talking about. Connects into this. Here's the staging. The staging comes up. That's the other area we can park an engine. And this is the interchange track that is for those other folks that might want to come into my layout, or I want to go out to the layout. So that's wanted to put that in just to give you an idea of what it's like. So that's what I'm doing up to this point. I still have a ton of things to do in terms of scenery. I've still got ballasting I need to do, and just getting this thing finished up. And then the next challenge is going to be hopefully I've got a nice book that I purchased. I've joined OPSIG, which is an organization that deals with model railroad operations. And they've got a nice book called Compendium that's written by 6 or 7 different people, Steve King, one of them, and discusses operations and takes you through the steps from designing your railroad, if you will, to the actual doing operations, car cards and all that good stuff. So that's the next step, but I'm hoping by late February to have this little project completed and be able to test run, if you will. I don't want to bring anybody in here to run operations with me till I know it works. And I know with the operations that I've done with other people that have been there some early testing, and that's really tells you whether it's going to work or not is getting people in. But we have to get hooked up and get the trains running first. So that's what we've got going on there. And I'm hoping by September, October to begin to do operations, but we've got a considerable amount of work in terms of the operations plan. And that could be another clinic actually talking about developing that operations plan, the things you have to think about. But the book that I'm reading right now is pretty concise, or not, I shouldn't say concise. Has a lot of information, probably more information than I need. I tell you that. But that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it today. And does anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, what's the book you're reading?
Hold on a second, and I'll show you, Bill. I think I can do this. We'll find out.
Oh, you disappeared.
That's because well, I guess I can't do it, but it's
I've seen this before. The trick is to turn off the magic background just temporarily.
And I'm going to figure out how to do that. Well,
Oh,
let me try one other thing here, Bill. Oh, wait a minute. It's trying. No, it's not. Well, anyhow, a compendium of model railroad operations from design to implementation. It's an official OPSIG publication.
ah,
It's if you join OPSIG, you can buy it. I want to say it was around $35, but the information I'm finding in it right now is very good. I think it was written in 2017, but it's got a lot of good information in it. And just well, while I've got it here, let's just give you an idea of. It starts with what the model and why operated layout design for operations, the crew, the operating positions, what you're going to need for an operations crew, fundamental to freight operations, passenger operations, yard operations. Then it talks about centralized traffic control and railroad signal systems, authorizing trains movement, model railroad communications, and hosting a session. So those are the topics. But it's right at about 300 pages.
sounds very complete.
It appears to be, and I had the fortunate circumstance last October of going up to November. I was up in New Jersey with the part of the excuse me for a second here. I've got one of those things. Little sinus there.
Hey, Ernie,
Yo,
help me look at my page.
I'm sorry.
Look at I have the book up. This is George.
Okay,
I have the book up.
if y'all could see that.
Yes, we can see it.
So that's the book, and I think it's a good book, George. If you had a chance to read that document,
No, just started.
just started, yeah. And I think that that's where I'm at. I've had this book now for about 3 months. Like I said, I was up in New Jersey, and I operated on 3 different layouts up there with about 13, 14 people that went up with the New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia interchange group up there, and ran into Dave Bellies and some folks like that, and they were talking about it. And it just seemed like if I was going to get into this operations thing, I need to get some information. It's not something you just charge into. Takes some thought, and yeah. So anyhow, that's what that's about. So that's probably the next big thing after I get this yard finished. I'm probably, if I ever get back in town, I'm probably about 2-3 weeks from having it to the point that I'll be ready to run full test on the layout, see how it interacts. I still have to order the auto reverser from Tony's, but I found that it takes me about 10 days to get something from Tony's, and I didn't want to come in the mail, me not be home, and some model railroader find out there was a PSXXR ER in my mailbox and take it or something like that.
Yeah.
You just don't know what to think about these guys. So
Ernie,
anyhow.
this is Greg. I got a question for you.
go ahead, Greg.
The Tam Valley Depot item that you got, when did you get that, or how long ago did you get that? Was it recent?
I bought it at Mainline Trains or Mainline
Oh.
Hobby
Okay.
last Monday, the 13th.
Oh, very recent.
Yeah.
No, I know that they still have an online presence, but they also had their owner had some health issues, and I've heard some people say if you're ordering stuff, some of it you might get and some of it you might not. And they're really big in dead rail, which I'm really interested in. So I was wondering if you had communication with them, but
I haven't had any
guess not.
communications directly with them. I deal with my friend Brian up there at
Yeah.
the Mainline Trains. That's where I buy most of my stuff. The only reason I didn't buy the PSXX AR reverser there was the fact he didn't have one. But Tony's got them in stock. But I had attempted to use a Digitrax product,
Hey,
an
Ernie,
AR one, and it was mechanical. It was just not working for me. Go ahead, George.
the issue with the reversers
You
is both the Digitrax and the NCE are mechanical and they have relays.
Hmm.
So when they detect a short, the relay trips, which takes a long time.
exactly.
Your power supply, your power protection unit for your short circuit, not the reverser, but the short circuit board made by the same company is electronic.
Right,
It trips in nanoseconds.
right,
And if you put a mechanical reverser on a layout that has the electronic circuit breakers, the circuit breaker, they both detect the short, but the circuit breaker trips quicker than the reverser.
right.
That's why you have to have that's why you cannot use a mechanical reverser with an electronic short detector.
Exactly, George. And that's what the guys at Tony's told me.
Now-
That Digitrax AR1 was a mechanical, and it's slow.
Yeah. If you're using a Digitrax circuit breaker, it'll work fine.
Right. But I've got two PSXXs right now, so I'm set the other way, so I'm going to change her over. And
And that's why that was mainly for everybody else to understand what the issue was.
well, that's a good point. And while we're talking about that, and I'm going to be off my topic for a moment here, I'd had a Y at another location on my layout, and I was experiencing problems with my locomotive coming across, and it would hiccup, it would just stop and start, and it would go through. And that happened till I got the AR, and that AR fixed that problem, except the fact that I had an older Soundtrax sound decoder in that locomotive, and one day the sound stopped operating, but the locomotive would go right on through that turnout. And when I hooked it back up, the speaker back up, it did it again. So I figured it was an older Soundtrax decoder, probably from like 2002. And my thought was that that was causing problems. So I changed that decoder out. But now in that Y operation over, everything works like a hunky dory and everything switches like it's supposed to, and I don't have any problems. But while we're there, another thing with the circuit breaker is I had to reset the circuit breakers for 3 amps. Out of the box, they come 2 amp, and I switched them to 3 amps. And that took care of the problem too, but it relates right back to what George was talking about there with regards to the reversers and everything and how they interact with the circuit breaker.
The other issue, if anybody's doing reversers, is you may have to set the timing on the circuit breaker board to be slightly higher than the timing on the reverser board. Because those boards can be set on how fast they will trip. And if the circuit breaker board trips too quick, the reverser will work.
Right.
Ernie,
Anyhow, that's what I have for you. Go ahead.
Gene Clayton, I saw your layout back in November, so you've made a lot of progress since then. I like
It's
your
coming.
water, yeah, I like your water tower. You didn't show pictures of your helix while you were starting to build it. It's one thing, but number two, I've never seen anyone put the turnout machines above the board. I've always seen them underneath, or at least read underneath. How did you come up with that idea?
Well, the problem I had was I had a major support of my bench work
Mhm.
that just fell in the wrong place.
Uh-huh.
So I've got 1, 2, 3. I've got 3 turnouts now on the lower level. One's in that building, and one's in that water tank, and there's another one hidden in another building over on the other side over by my granddaughter's motor company, Abby's motor company. That motor company actually has a tortoise motor inside. Then on the upper deck, I've got a crossover that has 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's 4 motors in that building. Maybe it's 2.
Well, I like the idea. I built an N scale, and so, but I did it all manually based on some recommendation from one of the gentlemen. And but I'd like to automate some of the turnouts with being N scale. Those are pretty large,
Yeah. They've
I like
also and Bob Rodriguez put me onto this, and I'm trying to think of the gentleman's name. They now have a motor that is very small in comparison to the tortoise.
Hmm.
And I just can't think. If I can find it, I'll throw it up on the website, perhaps as a reference. But it's much smaller and it's designed to be mounted on top for those situations, or underneath, where in my case, my second deck is a shelf layout and I don't have the depth to let that tortoise motor come down, or it's going to start interfering with the lower level. I've got,
Yeah.
I think it's 10 inches to work in there. So.
Yeah. Yeah, if you could find that, appreciate it.
Any other questions? So what are you all doing?
Well, I'm just starting to get back into it. I originally started when my son was very young. It was the old Lionel set that my dad got my brother and I way back in 1971. But we moved on to Fast Track and O Scale. So I guess the question I have is I'm looking to do elevations for my layout. So what is the best way to go? Is it use risers, or is it just like a flat surface and use those foam? I think what is it there? The company that makes all the scenery, Woodland Scenery,
Woodland
has
Stakes?
kind of like inclined foam blocks over.
Well, I can't speak to using those, but I can speak to the fact that on my Helix, the Helix, you're trying to increase from your level from one layout to the next level on it, and that involves a grade. And in that case, I was using pieces of 1x3 and mounting it under. How do I describe this? So you got the first level, go to the second level, you're going up it, and it's on my Helix, it's a it is right at 2%. And I was able to cut pieces that made that increase. And once I got the second layer done, from there, everything stays the same. You don't keep increasing, because if you go from, if this is flat, then you're going up like this, and you're going up for the first level, you don't put it another 2% there, and all of a sudden you're going 90.
Yeah.
You're setting that for that ground level and coming to the first turnaround. And once you got that, then you're staying consistent and parallel till you get to the top and you're topping out.
Yeah, because what I was looking to do is just like having an elevation to cross over a stream or something, nothing like a next level helix type thing. Because again, I'm beginning with this, but I was just looking at the magazines and I see ways of doing it using risers. But my question is, if I use risers, what goes into between the areas of track? Like if I have two sets of track and there maybe are about 6 inches apart or something, what goes in between?
Hey,
Over.
John, the Woodland Scenic, I'm not sure they make the units that will work with O scale because of the width. They
Mhm.
fix to their angles. You can't change it. If you use risers, you can set the upper and the lower, and then the angle between them can be adjusted for a smooth transition. And I've helped other people build layouts. And what I do is I take the plywood that you're going to use for your base and cut it just a little bit wider than your track and use that as a road bed. Now, be careful, because one of my friends, I told him to buy 3/8-inch plywood because it's flexible and you get nice transitions at the top and bottom. He bought 3/4 inch. It doesn't bend. It's real heavy and all. But
That's it too.
yeah, it's expensive. But if you take 3/8-inch plywood, cut it to a little bit wider than the track, it's nice and flexible, and then you can adjust the height of your risers to make sure the track is nice and smooth and there's no kinks at the top and bottom.
Okay. Can you use foam? Because I have 1.5 inch thick, the kind of home insulation foam. Can I use that?
That doesn't bend as well. What we're doing on his layout is the plywood's there, and then we're putting like home sewed or something else above it to kill the noise. So
That's what I was looking to do.
you can sandwich it, and depending on how far you put the risers apart, you could go down to 1/4-inch plywood and then put another 1/4-inch foam on top of it. One of the things I use is the Pick Panther insulation boards because they cut easy. I think they're about 1/8 or 3/16 inch thick, and they are a good sound dampener. And like in a yard where you don't want to put fork road bed, but you want flat, that's a good sound dampener.
I'll tell you one thing that I've done in the past. Sorry, my camera's not working. Is I use if you go to Home Depot, you get the 1-inch insulation, the little foam bead stuff. And if you just lay a straight edge on it, you can cut the grade however you want, and then you lay those up side by side, so you can get a continuous ramp that you just lay those up, and you can score the side of it to make it go around curves and whatnot. But then I would do just as you suggested, is I put Homosode over the top of it to mount for my track. So I basically have a continuous foam ramp underneath instead of isolated stages or supports.
Okay.
Yeah, John, one of the members of our club has a fairly large layout. He's modeling Philadelphia, so 90% of it is just flat plywood, but he's used some of those Woodland Scenics risers. His is in HO scale. And it worked for him because he was just taking one of the tracks that leads away from the town and it was going over another track. But again, because it's just this one thin piece of riser and he just slapped some concrete siding on both sides, it doesn't look very realistic. It achieves his goal, but especially if you were trying to do a scenic area that wasn't necessarily a cityscape, it wouldn't necessarily look that realistic. And it really depends on if you're envisioning your layout being sort of a flat top layout and then you're going to rise to go over a stream or something, or if you're really going to have different contours in your layout, just as landforms would have, and you want to have the railroad going through that. Now, one is easier than the other, but the second one with more work comes out looking a little more natural.
Okay. Thanks.
And YouTube is your friend.
Yeah, actually, I've looked around and I couldn't really find, much about if I was going to use risers and just like what would go in between like features, whether it's some kind of cloth or some kind of
I know a couple
poster
people
board or
have just
something.
used cardboard. If you cut strips of cardboard and you can hot glue those between the track and the roadbed to the side or between two tracks, and then you just put some plaster cloth or something like that on the cardboard to fill in the area.
Okay, thanks. What was that last thing? Plaster.
Plaster cloth. Woodland Scenics makes it, but you can find it cheaper in other places. It's basically what they would use to make casts out of. It's just kind of cheesecloth impregnated with plaster. You get it wet, but other people, especially in days gone by, have just used paper towels that they dipped in plaster and kind of does the same thing. It's just a little messier.
Okay, thanks.
Ernie, you're muted. Now you're not.
You're not working at all.
I
There you
was
go.
gonna say, John, if you want to try that plaster cloth, I've got a roll I'll give you. I've had it for probably 5 years. I was gonna use it, just never did it. So I've got some.
Okay.
I'm in Manassas, so we just get together someplace and I'll give you the roll. It's Woodland City brand.
Hey, Ernie, you should save some of that and make a tunnel for that interchange track coming in.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I looked at that route, and what I was dealing with was when I did my my helix, I was coming off the existing board, and I'm going through the first 180 degrees, if you will, to turn to come back to the helix. And my grade had started, so I'm going up by 2%. So now I'm up, say, 3 inches. I was going to use the plaster cloth, but I found that what I ended up doing was cutting foam and gluing foam in there, and then taking my hot knife and arranging the shape. Worked very well versus the plaster cloth. So so I had it left over. It's one of those things. It's like when you go through MMR and build cars, and all of a sudden you've got like 5 tons of styrene plastic from Evergreen or whatever, and you've got it 2x8s, 2x10s, flat sheets. You got this, you got that, and it's in a bin. But when it's time to build one of those scratch builder kit built smashed buildings, there it is. You got it. You got the plastic to go with. But I got a lot of stuff like that I could probably be a billionaire if I sold it. Maybe I ought to do that. Anyhow. Oh, okay. Any other things that we want to talk about? We're wide open here. We got 3 hours, folks, if you want.
3 hours.
That's what Zoom gave us. So we got 3 hours.
Doesn't mean we have to fill it, does it?
No, we don't have to fill it.
We'll all be watching each other eating dinner.
Yeah.
No, that's not happening.
Well, see, I'm actually being a bad boy. I'm talking to you guys, but I'm watching the ball game on TV with everything muted down. So
there you go, Ernie.
Hey, look at this. What do we got?
That's one of the half a dozen projects I have going on in my shop right now.
And this is Martin talking. Go ahead, Martin.
That's
it.
Well,
You got to share a different screen.
I'm seeing it fine here.
Looks fine to me.
Oh,
I'm
really?
seeing it.
Looks good to me.
Okay,
It's not a PowerPoint. He's just throwing a photo out there.
it's just a photo up on there.
I have set the security so that if anyone wants to share, you just need to go to the
Nice.
shared screen and pop it up there. So
Okay, well,
Got it.
this is an ancient kit. Wabash Valley, you may or may not have heard of. I actually have two of these I'm working on at the same time because I needed twice the amount of pain. Turned out to be not twice, but it goes up by the square.
Oh, been there, done that.
The
exponential.
Are those decals or dry transfer?
neither.
You didn't use a stencil and paint them, did you?
They came that way.
Ah,
The sides, actually, okay, so this lower section, it actually comes as two sides, and this lower section all is a single sheet of wood, painted and stenciled.
mhm.
And you have to cut it apart. The only thing I've kept are the sides,
Mhm.
the floor, this single sheet of wood floor. There's two end blocks on the inside, and some of this bracing is original. Not all of it, because there wasn't enough. The roof I replaced, the ends I replaced, the end sheathing I replaced, the entire underbody brake system is mine. And the hatches are actually 3D printed. And I haven't gotten to the point where there's actually 8 vents that go on the roof as well. So this is a Stillwell oyster car, as you can read. This is an old, 1890s, 1910, somewhere in there. I don't remember the dates. Guy wanted to have fresh oysters delivered, to Kansas City. So he decided to, well, let's build some cars to get them so I can have oysters.
If that car was sitting in a yard in the middle of summer for a couple of days, I wouldn't open those vents.
I know I'd want them open because otherwise I think the thing might explode. Let off that pressure. No, I think this was one of those special run custom jobs that ran from the south, Port Arthur, all the way up to Kansas City, and just to deliver oysters. So I got
They must have iced the hell out of it.
oh yeah, Conowingo Models, who you may or may not have heard of. They actually have this kit is sort of a ON30 version of the car. And I ran across it and I thought, oh, that's cool. So I got into a conversation and I said, could you scale up those 3D printed parts into full O scale? Sure. And they showed up in my mailbox, and they were, wrote them a check, and then I got working on it, and I realized I need a second set because I do have a second car. So I'm working on, let's see, I don't know if it'll let me back up. And we'll see. Well, maybe not. It usually is there it is. So there's actually 2 of these. And you can see the pre-printed aspect of it better on this. And of course, you can see it isn't straight. It's not even close to straight. I'm fiddling about with it as best as possible. And of course it says, oh yeah, it's Floquil Boxcar Red. I pull out my bottle of Floquil Boxcar Red. It isn't. I don't know what color red it is, but 50 years, 60 years aged Boxcar Red, maybe. So well oxidized. But I'll get something close enough so I can touch it all up and not worry about it and be done with it. But I got to put the roof sheathing on, put the roof hatches. Oh, you can see it. You can see them sort of over here, up in the corner. That diagram. There's 8 vents on the roof. And
So is that kit from 1975?
Thereabouts. Yeah, it's more like 1945 the way it's designed. I don't know if I can. let's see if I can, well, no, not easily. I could back up, but I have to back up like 20 pictures. The instructions are designed to induce insanity. They're horrific. I'm not sure you could build it from the instructions, to be honest. So, yeah, I'm looking at the pictures and the parts and said, this can only go together so many ways to get something that looks like this picture. And I had a bunch of reference pictures. There's actually some photographs of this car in existence. The only problem is I have 2 car A's, so I have to move that A and make a B or something.
I was wondering about that. You
Yeah,
get confused. You get them mixed up.
Yeah, well, the odds of you having 2 oyster cars on the railroad at the same time seems slim. So maybe I'll finish one and I'll sell it and keep the other. I don't know. And they also got Fox trucks underneath them, so that makes it even more interesting. So yeah, I don't know. I can't find the pictures easily enough doing it this way. I'm not really set up for it. But yeah, this is the current, one of the current projects on the bench. And it's coming along. Oh yeah, and the other wonderful thing is there's a lot of nut, bolt, and washer castings in this car. The instructions say every other board. It doesn't supply anywhere near enough of these little nut, bolts, and washers. In fact, you can see actually there's one missing in this photograph. So I know I went back and fixed that, but I actually stole the ones out of the second kit to finish the first kit, and then I'm replacing all the ones in the second kit with out of my own stock of I think they're Grant Line number 1s. But you know, there's a lot of nut, bolt, washer castings. So a lot of time spent sitting in front of the drill press with a lot of eye strain, drilling number 75 holes, and then more eye strain with the tweezers and nut, bolts, and washers, dropping them into little holes. Fun, and more fun. So yeah, that's one of the projects going on the bench right now. There's 2 or 3 other, well, there's 2 other, there's a box car and a sort of a caboose thing on the bench also, and 2 structures, one of which I've gotten totally stalled out on. I don't know why. I just lost interest in it. I need to build a fire under myself to get going again. So keep busy. So that's what I got.
Martin, did all your underbody detail, was that part of the kit, or was that stuff that you added to it?
It provided the queen posts and the K-brake. And some oh yeah, this is great. Some turnbuckles that were about 3 times as big as those, and some sort of weird stretchy cord, silvery, and it was like something like might have come out of a party favor type thing, but it was. I don't know how that was supposed to be used because it stretched like crazy. I was like, no, that's going away. This is number 0 surgical silk, which doesn't stretch, it doesn't break, and is tougher than tough. So yeah, so somewhere, when I put it together, there's a knot on the inside over here. This is all one piece, back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. And so there's a knot at one end, and there's a nut, bolt, and washer holding it at the other end. And it's all under tension. So
Wow.
it's going to be a lot of fun to finish.
It just once again proves that every car you just go from is a flat car, and you got your flat car there with everything else above it, right?
Yeah, I almost considered throwing away the entire floor too, and putting a recessed floor in with all the supports and all that stuff. And I said, no, I'm gonna be lazy for once. Just use the kit parts and use a plain flat bottom. I do enough of that nonsense already with the other cars. So
That
We'll
looks
see.
interesting, Martin. It really
Yeah.
does.
It's not a car you're going to see every day. That's for sure.
I don't think I want to.
Well, you have to like oysters, which I don't, but you know, maybe I'll make the other one the Stillwell, shrimp car. I don't know.
Yeah, something sounds fishy about all that.
I need to change either the A or oyster. The A is a lot easier. If I can find a decal or a dry transfer A that's roughly the right size, probably in the cigar box of parts, there'll be one. Something suitable. Okay, well, that's enough unless somebody else has some questions.
And who else has got something?
All right, well, we're done then.
Anybody else working on anything?
I could use some advice.
This is what I have on the bench right now. It's a micro scale general store that I'm just about finished up with
Oh, yeah.
for
Oh, he just went muted, Greg.
my thing went muted and I couldn't unmute it with that open. Anyway, I'm just about done with that and getting ready to start another scratch build to try and get some more points towards my AP.
That's what it's about, accumulating points, getting that AP finished. Yep. No doubt.
So I have a question on another topic.
Go ahead, Arthur.
Which is track cleaning.
Oh,
Yeah, which is a perpetual matter, but I've just downsized as a part of that, had to get rid of decades of old magazines. So I went through to pull out articles I might be interested in looking at, and I was having trouble keeping the track cleaning or good operations. So I've saved all the different articles about track cleaning things. And it was fascinating going through there. My immediate experience that made me interested in it is that I've been operating this layout for 30 some years, and the operation was getting rougher and rougher and erratic, and finally at the end, basically I couldn't run anything. It just had an electrical shutdown. And in one of the articles, somebody was talking about Goo Gone, and that they had used Goo Gone regularly, which I had for 30 some years, constantly getting worse and worse reliability and operation. And this guy said that he had the same thing, had a complete electrical shutdown until he went back and completely burnished and polished and cleaned with other devices the rail, and things started running again. And his advice was, don't ever let Goo Gone into your railroad room. So I'm suspected that was probably my problem. And I wonder any other people had other experiences.
I've had the same experience with Goo Gone and I don't use it anymore.
Yeah.
I was going through my emails today, and I had this article pop up from MRH, and Joe Fugate had an article in there talking about track cleaning. And I'm going to see if I can get to the page here. So give me a second here. I think I can pull this off. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Now back to Zoom. I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but he was talking about the various solvents for track cleaning. And you'll see something right there in the middle of that. Goo Gone, for an example, cleans grape. It's made of limousine, citrus extract, and quickly goes to a pitch-like substance that's a good insulator. So when you're talking about the Gugon, there it is. But he's listed all these things, and he's recommending a lot of things. And he's looking at the WD-40 contact cleaner and the CRC contact cleaner and protectorant. He says that dielectric constant number being low is what you're looking for. So that article's in the MRH magazine, which of course you subscribe to the thing, you can download the thing once a month, but it's about 4 or 5 pages in there, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, great.
But you notice that gasoline, kerosene, and diesel are things you shouldn't use. So.
Yeah. Thank you. And that's Model Railroad Hobbyist, I believe.
Yes, yes. I find some interesting articles in there. That, like I said, was this the one I just released for this month. I think they released it on the 15th, so it's the January edition.
Mhm.
But he was also, I think, a model railroader back in maybe 2017 or 19. He did an article on this, what he was following up on. But there's a lot of conversation about track cleaning. And I mean, as an example, my layout is I've only cleaned the track once in its existence. I don't seem to have problems with anything. It's the nickel alloy Atlas track, flex track. But the one thing on my layout is you're not going to find plastic wheels, so you don't find other devices on steam engines to help you get traction. Those traction, whatever they are, like a rubber type thing. So metal wheel sets are also ever been on my layout, and maybe that's one reason I don't experience the issues that some people do. I don't know.
Oh, damn it. What just happened? Oh, crap.
But while we're there, the other thing I think it's
Oh,
important,
shoot.
we talked about the layout earlier, John, was the humidity in your house. And obviously the weather we're seeing right now, you know, I'm fortunate that I have a whole house humidifier. We maintain about 40% year round between the air conditioning and in the wintertime. And I haven't had a problem with track shrinkage and track warpage and everything, you know, expanding and contracting like I hear some people have a problem. I know I talked to Bob Rodriguez for an example this time that he's running a couple of humidifiers in his basement to keep his layout wet, I guess, for lack of a better word, so he doesn't have the expansion and contraction problems. But certainly in the house, that's one of the things that happens. Wood dries out, things shrink, gets hot, things expand, so it causes a lot of track problems. Just something that I thought I'd say.
Yeah, that's interesting. Mine's in the basement. So I think it's pretty much, you know, temperature controlled throughout the year. Humidity is pretty low in our house because we did have a whole house humidifier, but the person who put in the new furnace took it out. So yeah, because right now we're at 20%. But I just got a question about, you know, electricity powering the trains. Do you guys just, you know, plug the transformers into the wall, or do you have some other kind of system set up to handle electricity? Over.
Well, I'll speak to mine. Mine is a home built power supply. Back in the day when a gentleman by the name of George Hughes was out there, he had Springhaven shops. When I bought my Digitrax Super Chief set, he sold me a kit that had the transformer and an on-off switch and a box and all the good stuff. And mine's a home built that plugs right into the wall, and from there I'm getting, I think it's 16 volts. I think it's 16 or 18 volts coming from there that goes to my command station.
Okay.
Now I also have some other power supplies. I know I have a Digitrax in Georgia. Might be able to help. There's a PS15, PS14, something like that. They're power supplies that basically are you know, it's a basic power supply. It, you know, it takes your AC and makes it so you can use it with your command station.
Yeah, Digitrax makes different power supplies for different things. So I don't know which one in particular.
Well, the DCC
is standard is 16 volts DC, isn't it?
Uh-oh,
They were-
Martin's holding something up.
That
Mhm.
that is one of my 2 power supplies.
It looks like an electrical hazard to me.
My father-in-law built 2 of them for me.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yep. Seriously old school, but very reliable.
Hmm.
And of course, my layout's simple DC, so I don't need anything fancy to power it. My layout's fairly small, so even in O scale, it's a very small layout. So this is
Just
bit of an
offhand, how big is it?
what, my layout?
Yeah. What's dimensions?
The room is 11 by 16.
Okay,
So-
because mine is a
about half-
table and it's 10 feet by 6 feet.
Yeah, well, okay. So remember that's how big the room is, but you got to have a place for human beings to get in and out of it too.
Mhm, right.
So about a third of that is aisle. So, and nothing is, except for in one end, is beyond my reach.
Okay.
So that's a firm rule to remember. If you have to crawl on top of the layout to get to part of your layout, you've made too big a layout.
Yeah.
Or you
mine's
need,
on a
or you need to
table.
cut a hole. Or you need to cut a hole in it.
Mine's on a table that actually is on wheels. So you can pull it out from the wall, get around.
Yeah, that'll work until something bad happens. Like one of the wheels falls off, or things happen.
Yeah.
Gravity is not your friend.
Mhm.
Yeah, John, I can remember back many years ago, I had an N-scale layout that I had set up on a series of pulleys in my garage, so I could put the car in the garage and
Oh,
bring
no.
it back. And what Martin was talking about, it was fine until one of the pulleys decided to let go, and that's the reason I'm not an N-scale anymore. I went to 8 shovels. Disaster. But
Ernie, was your car under it when that happened?
no, my lawnmower was though. It survived.
You
The
didn't,
layout-
you didn't want to mow anyhow that day.
It was a rainy day. But John, to answer your question, I think power supplies are, and George, if I'm wrong, please kick me up the side of my head. But I think power supplies generally, are taking your house current, if you will, and converting it to whatever voltage you need for your layout.
Right.
And you need an appropriate power supply. You need a power supply, and I want to use the word regulated power supply, not an unregulated power supply. That your voltage isn't fluctuating all over the place. So I think that and it being electrically safe. In my case, my layout plugs into the wall. I come through that transformer. It goes to my command station, and from there I have a track bus that runs around my layout underneath of my tracks that I jumped up about every 6 to 8 feet and put a feeder wire up to the track above. And the main thing there was to try to get the voltage to be equal across the layout. If you only plug in on one end, as you're going through the layout, the more distance you get, you have a possibility of losing voltage due to the
Voltage
resistance
drops,
of
right.
voltage drops. So that installing a bus is one way to not have that problem. And as I said very early on, I was an individual that put my layout together and I didn't think about that. And at one point, my layout was nothing but plugged the wires onto the track at one point, and the track was connected with track connectors. And that's what carried everything through. And I finally went back and put a bus in because I was having some problems at the far end. So I think that's something that when you're building your layout, you have to think about. Certainly, that could lead into a big conversation about whether you're going to have one power district or 2 power districts, or how many power districts do I have to have. And I'm not the expert there, but I do know that if you want to run a lot of trains, you have to have a lot of power.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
That's
I'm
the issue.
wondering if that question also goes to the electronic controls, like if you're in DCC or something like that. Most of our electronic devices we protect with surge protectors, and we make sure we have conditioned power for them. So it's probably less of an issue with the old style transformers than it is with the modern electronics. But if you don't have surges, it's not a problem, but it's probably not a bad idea.
Go ahead, George.
Another model railroader where I operate talked about he had a lightning strike near his house, not on his house, and the surge wiped out all of his electronics. So it won't happen often, but it's a cheap remedy, a cheap insurance to get a surge protector between the wall and your layout.
Yeah, John, the answer is there is no easy answer. You have to look at the layout. If you're running 1 or 2 trains at a time, you don't need a big power supply. If you're trying to run 30 engines, they all have sound. You need more power. Talking about your thing, I think I have a dozen computers on in my house at all times. And I had a lightning strike in my backyard. And I have surge protectors. And one of them got hit or got spiked because of it. I called APC because it's under warranty. And I said, hey, I had a lightning strike and it melted my APC surge protector. They said, did it damage anything behind it? I said, no. He said, then it did its job. Because its job is to die before anything else does. He says, we can replace it at 50% of the normal cost. So
did its job, but it still cost you some.
Well, I mean, it did its job by dying.
Yeah.
And it protected, the high cost computers. But the answer that I tell people about power is somebody who knows the command station, the DCC you're going to use, needs to kind of see your layout or at least a diagram and kind of recommend things like power districts, cable sizes, cable lengths. I did a clinic for the club that I was in, and people thought 18-inch gauge wire running 200 feet was no problem until I showed them the voltage drop. And 18-inch gauge wire at 75 feet has a voltage drop, I think, of 18 volts. And Digitrax puts out 15 volts. So that's why nothing ran at the end of that wire.
Yeah. You're in the negative.
So we replaced everything with 14 gauge bus wire, which has a voltage drop of like 1 volt in 75 feet.
Okay.
And just to add one other thing, the thing I did with my house was I have a whole house surge protector at the electrical panel.
Yeah, that's what I did that now too.
Yep. And I haven't had any problems, but I do know people in the neighborhood who have had a lot of issues due to lightning strikes. Coming back, someone was talking about a strike near his house. I had working in the fire department. I had a Suburban that had parked near a tree. The tree got hit by the lightning, and the Suburban lost everything in the computer. And they had to put it back to the dealership to get things set up again because the vehicle was just a ton of junk at that point because the computer had been knocked out by I guess the force, if you will, and the electricity transferring, even though it wasn't directly hit, but it was probably 30 feet from that tree when that tree got hit. That's when everything occurred. So lightning can definitely.
We're having our kitchen redone right now, and in fact, we don't have a kitchen right now, and they're doing a heavy up for our electric panel, and that's going to include a whole house surge suppressor, which I've just always had the little power strip ones. When you have one of those, do they have like a light or something on it to indicate if it's been used and if it needs replacing or anything?
Mine has a power light that also has another light that if it comes on, it indicates that it's gone.
Uh-huh. Okay.
It's monitoring. So, and what put me onto it was I watched the show Homes on Homes.
Yeah, he's good.
And he said this is a good thing, and he showed some things. I said, and I'd worked as electrician's helper for like 6 summers back in my high school, college days. I said, this makes sense. And like I said, I haven't had a problem, but my neighbors have. So I think it was a good investment for me.
Yeah, they didn't even ask me. They just said, we're putting in a 100-amp panel. You're going to get all new breakers, and there's going to be a full house surge suppressor in there. And I go, great.
So what else is anybody working on? Anything? Uh-oh.
Whoops.
Alex, what are you doing?
I have no idea.
Alex is giving you a preview of February
I'm going to give
1st.
you a preview of the coming flyer, which is, while you've been model railroading, I've been model railroad newslettering. There's some good things in here that you're going to see. John Sethian, who's O-scale Pennsylvania Railroad branch, has a long article in here about how to create a meadow on your layout in multiple steps, which could be of interest to people who are working on their layouts. Our friend Greg here has a fabulous article about rusting techniques. If you want to make your structures look rusted, he's got 3 different ways of doing it. And so those are 2 of the highlights in this issue. Matt Thompson, our former AP coordinator, is finishing up his layout move series. He's got things up and running in his new home in Williamsburg. And we have in our Meet the Modeler, Bill Day, who has won numerous contests with some of his models and has a lovely little layout, is profiled in the magazine. So that's coming up on February 1st, and I'm sure you'll all enjoy it.
Well, as I've said before, Alex, thanks for what you do.
Does anybody else have anything? Any other questions?
I had one. Go ahead.
I could use some advice. I'm scratch building a couple buildings, and I'm at the final detailing part. So I'm modeling North Walpole, New Hampshire. So this is where Steamtown started. For people that aren't familiar, this is the Boston and Maine Roundhouse. Across the river's the Rutland Railroad Yard. So it's North Walpole, New Hampshire on the right, Bellows Falls, Vermont on the left. This is a shot of this is after the Rutland went out of business at Steamtown. So it's Green Mountain Railroad, Boston and Maine shared facility. But here's a sand house that sits here in front of the coaling tower. This is kind of where I'm at with my modeling of the scene, but the sand house sits here. And the question I have is, I don't fully understand how this worked. It looks like there could be a mechanical winch inside this. I kind of would assume it was in the 40s, 50s that would pull up the ash pit bucket. And you would kind of dump it off this rail. I've kind of poked around in there. This is where I'm at modeling it so far. I have the rails coming up, and I can drop it in. So, but I'm a little stuck on the final detailing of how to approach that. And I've seen pictures, but they have this air cylinder kind of thing, but I don't think that my situation had an air cylinder in it. but this is the best photo I have of the facility.
Wow.
So I'm just curious, opinions. I can kind of see what looks like a little bit of maybe something sticking out of the ground here with a pulley on it, two pulleys up here on either side, but they're not in the center. And then it looks like a cable coming out of the center. So I'm just really confused at how things are connecting. Anyway, that's kind of my
Well, I
problem.
wonder, do you think the pit, the bucket that they pulled up to dump it into the hopper, did it ever go higher than that little discharge chute there? I mean, it wouldn't go all the way up to where the tracks are curving, would it? There'd be no reason to, but
Yeah.
I wonder
I would
why
bet
they
it-
actually made the racks curve like that.
I would bet it has a trip thing on it that catches the bucket and flips it it dumps it into the gond below.
There's kind of this center
think so,
rail that
too.
ends here, and I wonder if that like drags the bucket and it just drops, but it doesn't line up with this chute thing.
If you
Kind of
look,
see it here.
if you go back to the photograph, if you look real close at that opening at the top,
Here.
right there, don't jump down. If you bring your arrow down, no, put it back up where it was. Right at the left side of the arrow, it looks like there's a cable, not there, at where it was. Bring, move it. Okay, don't move the arrow.
Oh, here. Yeah.
Right there. It looks like there's a cable going right down to that center track, and there might be a guy on the car. And right there, I make you bet at the bottom of the car there's something that trips it right there.
Yeah.
Whoops.
So if you look real close, it looks like there's a straight line, right? Where you move that arrow, looks like there's a faint straight line that looks like there's a
See
cable there going from inside the building.
Right. And that's so that I'm imagining I could go to some kind of a winch machine inside.
Right.
But then I'm like, what are these for?
I don't know, but if you go to the right side of the building, at the floor of the building, to the right side, right? Draw out there. There's another straight line, which could be power lines.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right on power.
Now, those
That would put some kind of generator inside that building then.
those pulleys on the outside and the pulley at the bottom may be hooked up to the outside of the car to remove some of the weight off the cable. So there might be 2 or 3 cables coming down.
Well, it might be also that one of those cables, I mean, is that if the car flips on a trip, then you need the other cable to flip it back up to send it back down. So you
Yeah, and at the top where the middle rail ends, it looks like right there, it looks like there's some kind of obstacle that would prevent the car from going too far up.
Right.
Oh, I see that. Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
It's like a wheel catch or something.
Or stop.
Stop. Yeah, it would make sense. I don't think they'd want to pull it all the way up. You wouldn't need to.
Yeah, you want to dump it into the car below, so you wouldn't want to go all the way.
And I think it would be a challenge if it did go all the way up like that to try to get it back down, empty or full. It would be a challenge. So I think, yeah, they put that stop there because that's the absolute height they want that car to go.
What I would do with that photograph is to go into some software and see if you can change the contrast slightly to
Or enhance it.
highlight those cables.
That's a good idea. Oops.
I need to be on one of those TV shows where they just say enhance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all faked.
I know.
Have you traveled to this site at all?
Oh, I've been up there. This stuff's all gone.
Oh, okay.
This stuff was out of there, and well, you can even see it's gone here. It sits right here. This
Oh,
is
I see.
late 60s, or no, this is early 70s or late 60s. So at that point, that facility was out. Like they got rid of, because I think there's a pit there, and I think they just didn't need it and got rid of it.
And of course, everything. Well, they got some steam engines there. Because everything's all diesel, they wouldn't need it.
Yeah. So I don't even know in the pit. So I kind of guess, like I just put in, I thought it would look cool, the staircase come down and
Yeah.
some
Bill, do you think there's any kind of a
Nice
historical
modeling, though. It looks
society
great.
that-
Yeah, it does.
yeah, appreciate it. It's been fun, but I'm like just set it aside because now I'm stuck.
Yeah.
You think there's any kind of a historical society that might have
What
some
I
kind of
have
records?
posted, but no one seems to be able to explain this. You know, it's a little fussy.
Mhm.
Uh,
They could be
and
all
I
dead
found a
too.
brass version of
Nobody's
this.
around.
I found this thing, which I think was in the 80s. There's kind of this cool brass kit, but it's sort of similar, but it's not exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That looks like it would dump from the bottom or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can kind of see it here, and I
Yeah.
think you can see that somehow rides on that center rail, and then it just gravity opens up to dump it, which is kind of a really cool
Yeah.
structure. And I think here they've added with the brass some kind of a water hose to hose down the fire. But anyway, that is my project.
Well, the research is part of the hobby, and
Yeah, it's fun.
for many of us, it's a fun part. Sometimes it becomes a frustrating part.
Yeah, and I get the same. Like I got a sand house. I had the same issue with detailing the mechanism of that, and then ultimately this coal tower I've been building, same issue. All this fine grained detailing is the next evolution of my learning. So each of these projects is sitting and waiting while I learn how to do the finish, the last 20% of the modeling.
Well, it looks like you got a great start going on there. I can't wait to see this thing when it's fleshed out.
And Bill,
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a good article for the flyer when you finish.
Yeah, and I want to I'd like to get one of these structures done.
All right.
They've all been fun, but it's just detailing. So anyway, yeah, that's where I'm at. So appreciate the advice and thoughts.
Well, this has been interesting.
Yeah. I just had one thing I wanted to mention. I was listening to the discussion about power supplies, and this is the power supply that one manufacturer supplies with one of their kits. And according to the label on it, it produces 13.8 volts at 3.6 amps. Well, electrical testing is something I do, and I was having trouble with this controller because it seemed to have sporadic problems with control and with train speed. So I got curious and I got out some of my instrumentation and I ran a load test on it. First of all, it never makes 13.8 volts.
Mm-hmm.
It does about 12 volts. And it's a little hard to tell because it's not very stable. The other thing is it will put out about 2 amps. If you increase the draw on it above about 2 amps, this thing starts to get hot. And I mean, seriously hot. So if you were trying to use it to power your railroad and you've been looking at this as a power rating, don't.
Mhm.
By the way, I tested 2 of them. So they're both about the same. So that's just for what it's worth.
Which one is that, Andy?
Well, I don't tell anybody because they'll probably sue me, but it's a Digitrax TS314. Supposed to be a 50-watt AC DC adapter, rated at an output of 13.8 volts at 3.6 amps.
Hmm.
As I said, it makes about 12 volts and a little change. And above about 2 amps, this thing gets hot enough to fry an egg on. So
Wow.
I kind of didn't take it to to over 3 amps as it's rated, because I really didn't want to burn up one. But it did give me a very good idea why I was having trouble operating 2 engines on this thing.
Well, it's useful to know.
Yep. Yeah. I kind of wish that and this is just my personal complaint, but I kind of wish people like Model Railroader, when they were evaluating stuff, did that kind of bench testing like we do for equipment that we buy for professional use. But,
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, well, does anybody else have anything? This has been a very quick 2 hours for me. I don't know about you guys, but I've enjoyed the discussion and the sharing.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good
Yeah.
thing, and I think it's something we're going to do again.
Good.
Maybe like every other month or something. I think would be a good thing to do.
Sounds great. Good to see everyone. Thanks for your advice, tips.
Yes.
Same
Always
here.
good to see a bunch of happy model railroaders.
That's right.
Oh, thank you all.
Thanks, Ernie. Good seeing
Thanks, Ernie.
everyone
Thanks,
again.
everyone.
See you, Ernie.
Alrighty, y'all
care,
take
everyone.
care.